Once again, folks, you'll see that little, you're going to see another one here in a moment. All right, Paul, you're all set. Have a good meeting. Great.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you. This is the SHARC Pier 44 Commission meeting. Welcome all. Good to see Eric Donovan, Kyle Souza with the Marina. We had a great meeting with Kyle a couple weeks ago. I'll call the meeting to order, and I can see that we have a quorum with Howie, Eric, myself, Josh as an alternate. Patrice will be joining, but she'll be joining late, and then expect Karen Connolly to be joining. Jennifer O'Neill won't be able to join. Mike Connor, who's the chair of the Recreation Commission, will be an alternate in case Jen can't make it. Mike has other commitments tonight, so I don't expect him to be joining. I wanted to just start with just reading our statement regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. Situate Harbor Advisory Redevelopment Commission is committed to providing an environment of respect during meetings. We ask all members to interact in a polite manner, even when there is disagreement. We value the participation of our community and want all participants, including marginalized and minoritized communities, to feel welcomed and respected. We ask our committee members and all who participate to commit to these standards to support and respect our community. And always pleased that throughout this process, be it our meetings or our public outreach, folks have certainly adhered to this. Christine, did you want to introduce your team?
Yes, I would love to. And we do have a slide deck as well to kind of flip through.
Great.
So I'll as I bring that up, see the right button.
Yeah, I'm going to do before you get to the presentation, I'm going to ask for approval of the minutes of the March 2nd meeting. I'll move approval. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. And just let me go. So Paul, aye. Howie,
Aye.
Eric. I'm hearing Eric.
Eric, you want to unmute yourself? If you don't know how to, I'm going to ask you to.
Oh, there you go. Eric, you okay with the minutes?
I apologize. Yes, all set.
Okay, thank you. So any opposed? Hearing none, minutes are approved. Great. Okay, back to you, Christine.
Thank you. So again, thanks for having my team here this evening. Christine Wilson from, see if I can make this full screen. There we go. Okay. Copley Wolf, Christine Wilson from Copley Wolf. I'm principal landscape architect, and I'm joined this evening with Madeline Kirshner. She is our landscape designer on this project. Also with me is Ryan DuPont from GZA. He's project manager on behalf of the whole GZA engineering team. And then I'm going to hand off a couple of these slides this evening to Corey from, of course, the town of Situate, Corey Miles. So we last met together. What we call kind of our fourth SHARC meeting was on March 2nd, beginning of the month. And during that meeting, if you recall, we went through, summarized the online questionnaire results, that questionnaire that ran for most of the month of February. Since then, kind of right after that, that following Tuesday, we held 2 public information sessions on March 7th, on Tuesday, March 7th. One was during the day, one was in the evening to try to reach a broader audience. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and a couple other things that have happened since March 2nd. So these 2 top images show kind of the midday session, the evening session. It was at the library. Uh, Midday session had 26 attendees, evening session had 18. And we had a informal presentation. We went through a slide deck, but we paused for questions, comments, discussion. And it was two really great um, uh, kind of presentations, just conversations, I would say conversations. Each were kind of a little different, but had good conversations about this project with these folks. And at the end, we allowed time to so folks who kind of walk around to different boards, and one was on the project history that Paul on behalf of the SHARC kind of manned, and then Corey from the town had one about permitting and funding, and then there are a number of people from the design team there to kind of have conversations about the site design, pavilion design, and open space programming. And so kind of on the bottom are some images of that. A couple of the kind of key things we heard, I'm just going to highlight, a couple things was one was the view down Hatherley Road is very important, but the view along Jericho Road is equally important. There was conversation about the general lack of small boat tie-ups in the city, and how this could be a really special opportunity to have a small float off of this park, so folks could tie up small boats and access the park more directly, a stronger connection between the harbor and the park. We also heard a lot about the desire for park space rather than event space, and that kind of led into conversations about the size of the pavilion should be smaller. We also heard, maybe no pavilion makes more sense, and also requests to clearly define the pavilion uses if there was a pavilion. And kind of related to that, there was concerns about parking and having sufficient parking for this site, for this area, and how would there be enough parking for events tied to the pavilion? Just a lot of questions around that. So that's going to be a longer conversation that we want to dig into in this month and talk about the next meeting. We also had residential abutters, like the single family residential folks from next door and across the street were in attendance. And things that we heard from them specifically about the park design was, minimize light pollution, have vegetative buffers around the site to provide that privacy. Questions about locations for toilet, for where the restrooms and trash would be, requests for them to be more on the north side of the site, questions about the maintenance of restrooms, make sure they were kind of regularly cleaned, etc. So it was really great to talk to those individual folks. And also, I'll just add that since then, in this past month, Corey is also connected with the marina owner to the north, and he's very excited about this project and is in support of this park project. So she can kind of go into more detail about that if there's any questions. Also this month, we, I should also just say, in terms of specific recreational opportunities, I know Jen's not on this evening, but there's, really building consensus around what will people do at this site. Still kind of continuing this from similar to the online questionnaire, a lot of interest in this open lawn for more passive recreation, having the overlooks to really enjoy views out over the harbor. Again, I already mentioned the small boat tie-up, accessible tables and benches, and family-friendly programming such as like interactive art elements. And then also, I spoke with a woman at length about the public restrooms and how amazing it will be to have kind of this midway spot between Cole Parkway and the lighthouse to stop and use the bathroom, and how great that will be, especially for families. So last week on Tuesday, Corey, myself, Ryan, who's on the line from GZA, we met with representatives from the Mass DEP and the Coastal Zone Management Office. And a lot of what that discussion the discussion really confirmed our design assumptions listed here. They also kind of confirmed our assumptions about the permitting timeline, which was helpful, and just gave us some tips for that application process. And one thing that was great to hear is that they felt the project is an excellent candidate for CZM's Coastal Resiliency Grant Program. So kind of along those lines, Corey's also heard from other agencies and grant programs that this project is eligible for funding. Really because this open space is a flood mitigation tool, there's not a lot of opportunities to introduce new kind of open space opportunities like this along the coastline. And so we have a meeting tomorrow to talk specifically about grant opportunities. But that I just want to emphasize that is kind of building all these conversations as we're kind of spreading the word about this project. It is really exciting to hear that there is funding available to realize this project. This is kind of a kind of a sketch that highlights a lot of the things that I just mentioned that we've been hearing: the vegetative buffer, a small boat tie-up, the boardwalk and the open lawn that really was highlighted in both the online questionnaire as well as the public information sessions, that harbor walk I mentioned, and accessible parking. And just along the bottom, some kind of, I would call these green infrastructure features that are really going to I've talked about this before, but more green infrastructure opposed to gray infrastructure. And when I say gray infrastructure, that means like the underground drainage structures and pipes and all the things that Ryan, designs and stuff. And instead using these more kind of the civil engineer and landscape architect working really closely together to introduce these opportunities to do this micrograding on the site to create opportunities for water to go, designing places for water to go and water not to go, for example. And these features are what makes this project, again, available or eligible for grants. So with that, I'm just going to hand it off to Corey. We're prepping for the annual town meeting. And so I'm going to turn it over to her to talk first about the bulletin that was published last week.
Hi, my name's Corey Miles. I'm the coastal management officer from the town. As most of you probably know, the advisory committee did take a vote that was 8-0 against authorizing CPC funding for the project. And in looking at their what their explanation was, their perspective for denying that funding was published in the advisory booklet that will go out at town meeting. So I just wanted to make clear a few points that they published, but maybe for some reason it's not quite accurate. So the first thing, they wrote that they're requesting that we are requesting 400,000 from CPA funds. The request is actually only for 300,000. They also wrote that the geotech studies and substrata evaluation would only be needed if a pavilion is included in the design. Geotechnical actually is going to be needed regardless of the pavilion if we decide to include a pavilion, it would definitely help for that. But also, if we don't design a pavilion, then we still need to do the geotechnical work in order to decide on what type of pavement we need to use. The stormwater management would be designed around what kind of soils are there. We would need to know the depth of groundwater. We also need to know some things about the stability of the overall site in terms of the revetment and the seawall that's currently there. So we would need to know this information for the engineering study in order to continue designing the park. And then it seems to go into this other discussion here about without a parking solution, they don't want to provide funding for any more studies. But we're not really funding, this request isn't necessarily funding more studies. It's funding the technical design and engineering work that we need to get the project to a shovel-ready status. And also includes the environmental permitting. And if we were designing this park to be in an open field with nothing around, it would probably be much easier to design this. But because of the site constraints, being in a waterfront area, in a flood zone, having wetland resource areas, including tidal resource areas, it makes things a little bit more tricky in terms of the permitting. So that's why some of the costs are maybe a little bit higher than if it was just a building in the middle of a field somewhere that was not taking into consideration all these other resource areas that we have to be careful not to impact. And again, preparing the permits and the bid documents would need to take place regardless of whether there's a pavilion or not. So, and the parking solution is not completed. It's still being investigated. We have different avenues of, different angles we're looking at to come up with a more comprehensive solution for parking in the harbor in general. And we're looking at other things. So this is, what we saw in the original concepts. That was by no means a final design. That was just a starting point. And we definitely heard that they want, that people want more parking. So we just have to find that fine line between, designing a park for people that has opportunities for flood storage and hazard mitigation versus designing a parking lot for cars. So we're working on that, and it's by no means a completed project. Next slide. Okay, so we also wanted to clarify for people at town meeting what has already been funded and has been done or is currently in progress versus what the CPA funding would be used for after the phase 1 and phase 2 work is completed. So what we're really getting at is, we did the phase 1, which included a lot of public engagement and community outreach, because we really wanted to hear from the community and stakeholders about what you want to do with this new park. How do you want to use it? What kinds of things would you like to see there? So that was a really big component of doing the phase 1 site investigation and analysis work. And then the phase 2, which is they're overlapping, or they're a little bit fluid together, but it's kind of moving towards that next phase of like advancing the design from more of a conceptual phase to a little bit more of a refined concept based on the feedback that we received on the initial kind of concepts and the questionnaire and the public outreach. And that information is still being rolled into this refined concept design, and we probably won't even have that ready until this summer. So there's still a lot of work to be done to get this design into a refined concept, and then also rendering that concept so that it's much more visual, that you could see what it is, rather than right now all we have is some kind of lines and drawings and nothing is really concrete. And then phase 3 is all that other pre-construction work that would still need to be done in order to get this to a shovel ready phase. And that includes definitely the geotechnical work that would be done regardless of whether there's a pavilion or not. The local and federal permitting applications and state permitting applications, that's a very long timeline. And it needs to be started probably by the summer if we want to be doing construction in 2025. And additional meetings to make sure that we're still hearing from stakeholders, and then developing these technical specifications into bid documents. So things like the grading plans, for them, with details on the materials and the layout and the drainage, utilities and electric and plantings and a lot of other things that go into this that maybe you wouldn't think about as being necessary or as part of a pre-construction layout. But and then also grant application support. We don't want to, we want to make this eligible for grant funding, but we also want to make sure we design a park that fits the needs of this town. So we're trying to incorporate some of those, key buzzwords that, grant managers really like to see, but we also want to be mindful that we're creating something that this town wants and will use. So trying to figure out, what's the best way to approach that as well. Is that it, or do you want me to keep going?
No, that's great, Corey. Thank you. I think just building just on what Corey was just talking about is kind of next steps, figuring out just echoing what Corey was mentioning about designing this to be eligible for grants, but also for all of you in Situate. So phase 4 would be obviously construction. So we're looking ahead in every step of this project to implementing this park. Ideally, we're working on this timeline, talking to the permitting agencies, meeting with you all with the intent to be shovel ready 2 years from now, spring of 2025, which means having the bid documents ready by the end of next year. So that's not new information. We've gone over that in the kind of last few meetings. So next, okay, so we want to use this opportunity to really talk about the April annual town meeting. It's not, like 2 weeks away, April 10th. And so what are we preparing for that? In talking to Skylar Schick from the CPC, the vice chair, who will be the one presenting this project at the annual town meeting, he mentioned could be advantageous just to help spread the word about what this project is really about to either folks who aren't listening to this meeting or who just haven't been part of the process to date, putting together some boards and put together some pamphlets for that event. So here's just an initial draft these would be 2 boards that highlight some of the things we were just talking about, a sketch, the kind of this note that green infrastructure features would kind of pave the way for grant opportunities. The phase 1, the phase 1/2 and phase 3 information that Corey mentioned about the recreation information, etc. So that's it that I have, but we can I just want to pause there, Paul, for questions. I can jump back to any of the slides that people might want to kind of discuss.
Great. I had a couple of questions initially. When was your meeting with Mass DEP and Coastal Management? What date was it?
That was on Tuesday, March 21st.
Great. Corey, you mentioned, we heard comments about parking, and I would say we've had these bookends. We've had many, many comments in the survey, probably hundreds who want less of a parking imprint. And we've also within the bookends heard people who want a lot of parking, basically to make the whole property a parking lot or a substantial portion of it. We've heard people say we need to provide overflow parking for Situate Tavern. So there's lots of points of view on parking, and I think as Corey said, the assurance we want to give the community is we realize this is an important issue. We're trying to balance the building a park, not a parking lot, but sensitive to the parking needs. And so there's, just to emphasize again, there's no final decisions at this point on the amount of parking. That won't be up for a vote at town meeting in April. We're going to keep working on this. Corey and the town staff are doing a lot of work looking at developing additional parking that would benefit the whole harbor, as well as access to Pier 44 within easy walking distance of Pier 44. So it's not a concluded issue. It's we're still working on it, and we've heard all these comments. And again, when you have a lot of voices saying 0 to very little parking, and other voices saying make a parking lot, that's quite a bandwidth to work within, and we're trying to do that. So I hope the community has faith in our effort, and that we'll end up with a result that people can be proud of and will facilitate use of the park. So let's open it up to questions. Patrice, welcome. I know you had a conflict, and appreciate your joining us. So first, with the commissioners, any comments or questions?
I think the way I'm hearing where we're at right now is we certainly need the money from CPC to further the engineering, which allows us to know just how much we really can do with the property, right? But we've got the elephant in the room is parking. And at town meeting, we don't want parking to be a hard stop. I think people appreciate the park project. And I think we're hearing that through the public meetings that we have and questionnaires and so forth. But we don't, somehow we're going to have to address parking a little more definitively, because advisory is going to stand up and say they don't approve this because of parking. So I think we need to address potentially a hard stop, not of the project, but not getting the CPC funding because this is an outstanding issue. I don't know how we're going to address it, but I just throw that out.
Yeah, I would say if the CPC funding isn't approved, it'd be pretty hard to move this project forward. Other comments, questions? Any comments, questions from the public? We will have a public comment agenda item as well. Corey, just one clarification. You mentioned the geotechnical work and that's needed, irrespective of whether there's a pavilion or not. My understanding, that's about $26,000, or what's the amount you estimate for that?
Yeah, it's in between 24 and 26,000. So it's not like a major component of the CPC funding being requested.
Right, so I think that's an important clarification because we've had 4 meetings with the advisory committee or the representatives, 2 at the advisory committee, 1 meeting where the advisory committee presented its concerns to the CPC. And then earlier this week on with the select board, a joint meeting of the advisory committee and the select board. And so we've just struggled to get them to understand some of these facts that this geotechnical work isn't hundreds of thousands of dollars and necessitated by a pavilion. We keep saying it and we keep getting it repeated to us. So I must say it's kind of frustrating. Any members of the public that want to make a comment at this point? Great. Okay, anything else on your part of the agenda, Christine?
I would just add where we have kind of a running list of questions we anticipate it maybe in the minds of folks at town meeting. And one of them being exactly what the parking that Howie raised, and putting together just our response to that for Skylar. I think on terms of parking, I would just echo Corey that the town is looking at parking in this area more comprehensively, more holistically. What are other opportunities? And just as really, I think, doing a good job and continue doing a good job in the coming months to listen to everyone and um, uh, find a solution that really will make sense and allow this project to move forward, because as kind of noted earlier, this is an amazing opportunity for for stormwater flood storage, both coastal flooding, inland flooding, and the hazard mitigation, kind of retreating from the water in terms of not rebuilding an enclosed structure. So it's a really great project on a number of fronts, and kind of agree with the group in terms of it'd be really unfortunate if parking concerns about parking held this project up, didn't allow it to be shovel ready for 2025. And again, I think we just need a little more time to find that right solution. And I would propose that that is a topic for the next meeting. And also just to echo Corey in terms of this work in progress, it's again, it's not over. We're still having these conversations about parking, as well as conversations with butters, et cetera, to really finalize that concept designed before we move into phase 3. And just Paul, as you mentioned, the geotechnical investigation is actually just a really small part of phase 3. Really, the chunk of phase 3 is producing those bid documents, those technical specifications and construction drawings, and putting this project out to bid the end of next year. And the reason it it's not going to be until the end of next year is the permitting timelines. It has to go through the MEPA review process, which we're going to start as soon as possible. And then the Chapter 91 license, that process does not start until after the MEPA review process. So it's really the permitting timeline that kind of dictates this schedule. So those are my 2 cents. But that's all I have this evening,
Great.
Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments on this agenda item and the preparation for the town meeting?
Yeah, Paul, let me just reiterate, I think we have to be very strong in our approach that the CPC money that we need is for engineering to help us determine just how much parking that the property will support. And because otherwise it's just going to be, well, in my mind, they're going to focus on parking. We don't have enough. We can't determine that until we have the money to have the engineering provide additional data. In my mind.
Thank you, Howard. Corey?
Yes, one thing that we had talked about in the past was creating like a supplement that would go in the advisory pack booklet at town meeting. I did speak to the town clerk today, and she said that if we wanted to put an insert in to clarify some of these points made in the advisory booklet, that we would have to get approval from the moderator, and that meeting is next Wednesday, I think. I'd have to double check the date, but I believe it's next Wednesday. And they wouldn't do it for us, like we'd have to print it out and, just put it next to the advisory booklet so people could pick up both. And then we had also talked about maybe creating a pamphlet or a brochure or something like that also, that people could pick up and look at extra information about what the park, where the park is right now in the design phase and what we want to do with this funding going forward. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk about those two things. Well,
Yeah, we do plan to have a booklet. And so that will be on the table at town meeting for folks to have. So we'll talk about more about that and preparing for the meeting with the moderator.
And Mr. Barkowitz, you do have another hand raised.
Yeah, no, I see that. Pat?
Hi, thanks, Pat, off of Hatherley. I just, surely parking will come up. And one thing that I might suggest is that we just, in any presentation, de-emphasize the possibility of a wedding right now, because I think people think of big event and that is a magnitude higher for parking requirements, and moving down the road, maybe that will be the case, but I just wouldn't put it out there in the initial presentation at a town meeting anyway.
Thank you, Pat.
That's, yeah.
Appreciate that. Good. Let's go to outreach. I want to thank everyone on the commission, and Corey and Patrice, Karen Connolly, that have really embraced our outreach plan. We've had the surveys, the public meetings, but just so folks are aware, I've been keeping track of the meetings we've had and outreach, and we're at about 60 meetings. So these concepts we've asked the public to look at and think about. We're not in a cave somewhere creating these things. It's based on the outreach. And so we've had, as I said, heard lots of voices just in terms of support for the approval of the CPC funding. We've had unanimous approval from the Select Board, Community Preservation Committee, Waterways Commission, Recreation Commission, Beautification Commission, Situate Harbor Cultural District, Historical Commission, Commission on Disabilities, Coastal Advisory Commission, Economic Development Commission, Sister Cities Partnership West Cork, Friends of North Situate, and others. So there is a lot of support that's been communicated, and I think that'll be reflected at the town meeting. And we haven't stopped, and we'll continue. We've met with the adjoining property owners. I see Brian Murphy has called in, and Brian has, I don't know if anyone else from the public attended both the morning and the evening sessions of the public meeting. Brian was there, and so we're going to be talking with Situate Tavern and the Barker Tavern. We had a really good meeting, as we mentioned, with Kyle Souza, who's the general manager of the Situate Harbor Marina. And I know, Carl, did you want to make any comments at this point?
Not at the moment, but thank you though.
So, again, we're trying to engage the whole community. We've all been to town meeting, and I've always found it frustrating when there's a proposal and there's a fair number of people who said they'd never heard of it before and didn't have enough input, and we made a dedicated effort to do this with as much outreach and community involvement as possible. And I really thank the Copley Wolf team for embracing that and providing a lot of leadership in that regard. And then all the members of this commission and Corey and town staff, Jim Boudreau certainly been a great help in this as well with the rest of town staff. So anything else on outreach anyone wants to talk about? Great. Let's move on to reports from the commissioners. Howie?
The waterways meeting isn't going to take place until next Wednesday, so I updated them at the last meeting where we were, and that's when they decided to submit a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on this project.
Great. Josh and Eric on Commission on Disabilities, any liaison report?
No report from me, but I believe Megan is in agreement to support this, so she'll be sending that over. Did she send over the letter of support yet?
I don't think I've seen it yet.
Okay.
No, it wasn't approved. Eric, anything to report?
No, I'll reiterate what Josh said. I think the only thing in relation to this committee was getting the approval for that letter of support, which should be making its way to you.
Great, thank you. Patrice?
So I met with the Situate Harbor Cultural District on March 23rd, and they unanimously voted to send a letter of support in approval of the project and the proposed funding. I subsequently met with the Situate West Cork Sister City Committee on I believe the 27th, Tuesday, and they also sent a letter of support, approval of the project. Everyone's very excited. And I held a meeting sort of with Situate Cultural Council, the Situate Visitor Center and the Historical Society, and sort of inform them of the project. I think several of them are, if they have not already, are planning to submit their own letters of support. There's just a groundswell of community favor for it.
Thanks, Patrice. I see Sue DePizza on. She's chair of economic development. Sue, did you want to report anything?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yes, EDC has sent their letter to the select board in support of the project. And I was just wondering if you thought it would be helpful if C Plymouth, I know they're not a town resident, but they are certainly the regional promoters of tourism that include for Plymouth County and include Situate. I'm sure that they would be interested in any kind of positive action like this project.
Great, yeah, that'd be great, Sue. Thank you.
Okay, I'll ask.
Okay, any other reports? Corey, anything else you want to report on? Okay, public comment. Any additional comment from the public? Great, hearing none. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second,
I'll second.
Howie second, all in favor, and I'll go around. Howie,
Yes.
Patrice,
Aye.
Eric,
Yes.
Paul, yes. Great. Hey, thank you, everyone, for your participation. Please come to town meeting, ask your friends and neighbors to come, and I hope they'll all support our funding request. We need to finish the job to get to a shovel-ready project that everyone in Situate will be proud of. So again, thank you all. See you at town meeting.
Night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Seth.
you.